We're going to go right into our afternoon panel. And so I'd like to invite Mr. Gabriel Pang, who's going to moderate the panel. He's Managing Director of Firedog Creative Company Limited. And joining Gabriel on stage will be Steve Bocska, founder and CEO of PugPharm from Vancouver, Paul Cameron, CEO and founder and director of Booktrack from Auckland, New Zealand, and Edith Yeung, founder RightVentures and VP Dolphin Browser from San Francisco. So please give a warm round of applause to everyone.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm the moderator of this section. This section is the new technologies and audience interaction. So we are doing new technologies and interaction now. You can send in your questions with the Twitter account. Is DELF, right? DELF HK, right? Okay, so in the first section, the first speaker will be a beautiful lady, and she is the vice president of a 100 million download browser, Dolphin, maybe the best on Android, and also she is the founder of the RightVentures. So let's welcome Ms. Edith Yeung. Edith.
This is the wrong PowerPoint. So how do I actually switch this? So how's everyone today? And I swear to God, I didn't coordinate with Bart, but there's definitely multiple points is actually quite similar, especially around mobile is eating the world. Let's see. So today, I think there's like 3 amazing speakers on stage, but I'm going to actually kick it off. Have a lot to do with because I spend a lot of time focused on mobile, particularly on Android. For a show of hand, I just want to have a quick understanding for our audience here. How many of you actually in the mobile business or app business? Okay, that's a few of you. So for the rest of you, you can go home now because it's not relevant. But anyway, I think that not only for people who are working in mobile or mobile apps, I think that mobile actually doesn't matter if you're not in the app business. It is a big part of the internet that you definitely need to think about. So, which the title of my talk today is all about mobile is your friend, not enemy. Because even you're not in the app business, there's so much to think about around mobile internet in general. So today I'm going to kind of give you a really, really simple framework to think about mobile. But just really quickly, as he mentioned earlier, I actually split my time between Dolphin and also RightVentures. So for RightVentures, we actually invested in about 25 early stage startup for the last 3 years, involved with a lot of cloud computing, like Heroku, CloudCake, which both got acquired by Rackspace. And now, working on Dolphin, which we, just a sort of a quick story for Dolphin and why I'm standing here today. We actually started about 3.5 years ago. It's a little bit interesting that how Bart actually started on Apple. We actually started on Android. When we first started, there was only 3,000 ads on Android. We picked up the first Android phone, I think at the time it was the HTC G1. Just couldn't believe how bad the browser experience was and decided to build our own. And we picked the name Dolphin because dolphins swim really fast. You want your browser really fast, right? Very smart because it learned the way you browse. So we were actually the first one that create gesture browsing, so you can actually draw on it, so you don't have to type anything. And we also believe that on a smartphone is not like the desktop. So how do you actually reinvent the way that you interact with the internet? So we also introduced voice browsing. So you literally talk to Dolphin, say things like eBay Nike shoes, go into eBay, show you all the Nike shoes without you typing a word. So we created all these really, really cool features, and very, very luckily, many other users also agree with us. It took us not quite 21 days, it took us 6 months to get to the first million install. And it's just been growing and growing ever since. And about a year later, we got our first Series A from Sequoia, Matrix Partners, also Qualcomm. And about 2 months ago, we announced we're at 100 million install worldwide. We actually started in the US, but we have a very, very big team now in China and Japan. And I'm based out of San Francisco. So now I want to really sort of put myself in your shoes. If you're not in the app business, you're looking at all these mobile stuff, everybody's carrying either an iPhone or Android phone. And what are you doing about this? And mobile is eating the world, but meanwhile, you're not really eating any part of this. So what I want to do is actually share with you a few statistics. I think I found it really, really interesting. Hopefully this will actually convince why you need to pay attention to mobile. So if you look at this particular chart, smartphone and tablets are the new media. We were sitting right next to a lady earlier during lunch, and she's working on something very similar to like the Hulu and Netflix for Hong Kong. And many of us, I don't know about you, the first thing that when I wake up in the morning is to check my phone. It's horrible, horrible thing, but that's the way it is. So if you think about this, right, smartphone and tablet now is a new place where you should distribute. You have to think about, if people are spending so much time, not necessarily taking time away from PC, but if you compare 3 years ago, it's almost double, triple the time that you spent on internet, and all because of smartphone and tablet. And another thing to look at, this is actually a chart comparative, so that the world distribution of social network compared to 3 years ago. Now, last year I spent a lot of time looking at emerging markets. If you go to a country like Indonesia, they would tell you, well, I'm not on the internet, I'm on Facebook. A lot of people think that Facebook is their internet. In fact, many young kids, they don't even have an email address anymore, they just communicate with their friends on Facebook. And if you look at this, right now Facebook, on a monthly MAU, which is sort of the short for monthly active users, is 1 billion. 1 billion. That's a lot of people. But the exciting part is, there's about 7 billion people on Earth, and right now, 1 billion, there's still at least 4.5 billion people that don't have a laptop, have no access to an internet at all. And because of Android, which is really, really cheap phone, now for the first time they have access to the internet. That is the exciting part. There's so much more room to growth because of smartphone. So think about how you, doesn't matter that you're, whatever business that you're running on, how are you actually taking advantage of this? It's a very, very exciting time. Another type in terms of mobile, even though you're working on things that may seem very, very traditional, I think the most exciting things you can think about, doesn't matter, is transportation, ordering food, watching video, communications. There's all these things that been done for all these years, still getting disrupted by mobile. In San Francisco, I actually just sort of donated my car, and how I actually sort of commute, I use Uber, Lyft, and these apps actually store your credit card information. They're killing it. Like, you don't even need to hail a cab anymore, because why would you actually want to pay? With all these change in your hand, you can just pay via the mobile phone. And in fact, not just the US, in China, it's the same, right? I don't know if you guys have heard of the app, I think that based out of Beijing, it's called Didi. That you sort of pay taxi via your mobile app. And same thing, WeChat, which is the Weixin WhatsApp of China, they actually just connected your WeChat account with your bank account. And you can start paying via just, you scan a barcode. It's just amazing in terms of growth and how payment is going to work, and truly disrupt things that, like transportation, that nobody touched for many, many years. A couple other things that we talked about before, WeChat, WhatsApp, KakaoTalk, Line, Voxer. They are killing basically the SMS and voice even, Voxer and Skype, both basically taking huge share from the carriers in terms of all their income is counting on these things. And many of them are trying to create their own app, but frankly, it's very, very difficult. It's almost a little bit too late for them to want to do things like this anymore. And funny thing, I was talking to actually one of the carriers out in Spain. They, instead of sort of fighting with WhatsApp, they preload WhatsApp. And instead, the carriers doing more and more is, if you are using Facebook or WhatsApp, then all your data via these particular apps are completely free. So which means that, in developing countries, if you think a way to sort of, how do you actually promote your thing, which Facebook now is making a little bit more easier in terms of mobile advertising on Facebook, a lot of a user could see, and you will get a lot of impression via these apps, and the user don't have to pay extra for it. And on top of that, we talk about mobile, there's many, many new form of mobile. Could be the Google Glass, could be smartwatches, or could be the Oculus Rift, which Facebook, I think they just bought by one point. I don't know. I think that they have a lot of cash, so probably more acquisition is gonna come soon. So now we start to talk about why you need to pay attention. There's so many new form of mobile devices you need to think about. How do you actually make mobile your true friend? So we don't have enough time today. I'm not gonna tell you the step-by-steps of how do you think about all this. But I do want to throw in a couple other things for you to think about, so it's the right sort of framework. I think that for iPhone and Android, it is a very personal device, and I don't think if you're more into B2B type of business, I can't imagine if you're sort of building just like yesterday, if you're building a robot to save the forest fire and all that, probably doesn't make as much sense if you're on mobile. Maybe it is, maybe not, but I think that you really have to think through what you're working on. Is it more B2B or B2C? If it is B2C, I think having a mobile presence is unavoidable. A couple other things to think about. This is actually a research from Pew Internet. Pew Research actually lists out how people are spending time on a mobile phone. And in fact, 34% of Americans purely surf the internet via their phone, not even using laptop. And 1/3 of the population in the US, about 100 million, are purely surfing the internet via their phone. So think about that. And of course, texting, communicating, listening to music, all these different ways of consuming content means that there are probably many, many new ways for you to think about to spread your product and spread your ideas. And another thing that I think with mobile is not necessarily taking attention from laptop, is multiplying and expanding the internet. But a few things that add on to it, not just an expansion, is from a location point of view. Now, not only I know that you're looking at a particular website, I know exactly where you are when you're looking at checking out this restaurant. That's powerful. This is something that laptop would never be able to do. But now, because of GPS, I can longitude, latitude, I know exactly where you're at. So what that means is if you're running a restaurant, if you're running something that is close by, there's a lot of new form of advertising that will really drive home in terms of results because you're so close by. And then on top of that, there's multiple screen size. And I don't think that, for tablet, for iPad, or for all the Android tablet, or very, very tiny, small Android phones, or even very, very tiny watches, or even Google Glass, all these are new form of screen size that all of us need to think about, and which empower gesture, voice, various different kind of push notification to help you to reach your audience. So with that, hopefully I convinced you just enough to think about mobile as such a powerful, powerful platform that none of us should ignore. And mobile is not only your friend, but your best and closest friends. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Edith. And mobile is your best friend, so don't leave it. Don't leave it here. Okay, thank you very much. And in the next section, we will have a very successful founder and CEO of PugPharm, Steve. And he is, well, let me check his speaker's profile. I've got the keywords: getting community active, engage, fun, playful, community, identity, reputation, status, all related to online games. And actually, I'm a game developer by myself, and I hope that I can learn a lot from him about customer retention and how to make them pay more in-app items, diamonds for me.
Great.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, let's see what I can do. So thank you for that intro, and thank you, Edith, as well. I'm glad to hear that mobile can be my best friend, because I really don't have very many friends. And actually, now is a good time. I'll take absolutely no offense at all. I know those lights are bright. I know my head is kind of shiny. If you need to put sunglasses on, go ahead. I have no problem at all. So thank you very much. As far as thank yous go, I'd like to start, because this morning Hal introduced this session, and he said how lucky you all were to have all of these great speakers here today. Well, I have to tell you, I feel very lucky to even be here today as a speaker. I wanted to sort of extend that thank you to you, because I'm really just a simple little boy from Canada, from a little manufacturing town called Windsor in Ontario. And for me to be in Hong Kong right now in front of an audience of very talented and smart and ambitious and experienced people like yourselves, and people to talk about things that I really love and care about, to me it's like a dream come true. So these kind of events throughout my career have helped me, if I were you sitting in your seats, meet all kinds of people and really help my career take big steps forward. So yes, I guess in that way you are fortunate, but I feel super fortunate to just be part of this. So I am now from Vancouver. So has anybody here been to Vancouver? Oh, actually quite a few. Okay, so you know, I've been to Hong Kong once before. This is my second time. And Vancouver is, I've often heard it's kind of like a sister city to Hong Kong, and I can see why. There really are a lot of similarities, and I feel really comfortable and really welcomed here. I guess the difference with Vancouver is that it seems to me sometimes like there's more Asians there than there are here, but there's just an awful lot of them have moved there. So in my presentation, I'm going to be talking about technologies and how they are used to create engagement and interactivity. In particular, I'm going to be using some examples from what my company has been doing for the last few years, which is bringing these principles of play and design into non-gaming environments. So again, people call it gamification. There's lots of other words for it. But we'll start with this idea that unleashing interaction is really what the next big wave is. And I'm going to use some examples from some of the projects with some of the customers that we've worked on recently. But to start, I want to talk about a converging cluster of 3 trends that are happening right now. And the first one that we've noticed is this idea that there's an always online world. Now, it used to be, not that long ago even, that I could go to the library or go to the beach or go for a hike, and I could do it entirely by myself. And it seems that I can't really do that anymore, because now this thing comes with me and I'm never really alone. So practically, technically, psychologically, in many, many ways, my life has changed. I'm no longer ever alone. And yet somehow, I was kind of joking about that before, that I don't have friends, but somehow I do almost feel a bit lonelier than I used to before. It's sort of a strange thing that the more connected you are, in some strange way, the less connected you really feel. Now that we're all online, this is part of, I guess, what I'm talking about right now, that we have virtual identities. And it used to be said that everybody has a public life, a private life, and a personal life. So 3 different kinds of lives. And I would say that we also now have a virtual life. And I have a virtual identity, and it has a slightly different personality than my real identity. I think it's probably far more interesting than I really am. It probably swears less than I do as well. It's also quicker to give opinions about things. But it is different from those other 3 identities or different realities that I have. And we're very comfortable with these virtual identities interacting online with other people, with brands, with communities of people that you may not otherwise have the courage to approach and be part of. And then the third converging piece is that there's this new science that's been, I guess, in development. It's not really that new, because it's really about psychology. But what's new about it is that we're now using principles of gameplay design, as Bart had mentioned earlier and was a little bit alluded to a moment ago. We're using these ideas that there's psychology of motivation and also game-like designs that can help people do more of what they want them to do, and help businesses interact with their communities, and help fan groups be more involved and engaged with each other. So those are the three forces. And I'll tell you why all of this means something to me. For over 10 years, I designed and produced a number of big budget AAA video games for, apparently every one of these sessions has to mention the word Disney at least once. So Disney, Electronic Arts, Vivendi, Ubisoft, some of the games I worked on, Need for Speed, all three of the first CSI games, those were my designs, Need for Speed. These are games that have generated over $600 million in revenue. I'm very sad to tell you that most of that money went to other people and not to me. And I also co-founded Hothead Games in 2006, which is a very successful mobile development company. So my perspective is primarily as a gameplay designer. I do also have an MBA, so I understand enough about business, and I've started a number of companies. But that's where the convergence is. It's bringing these two worlds together of business and game-like design. So this is what I like to look at as this is something that we created in our company to help people understand that there are these different phases of engagement, and what marketers have always done extremely well is that capture phase. So a marketer's primary weapon is a really, really bright flashlight, right, which they shine out there to get people's attention, and then people look at you, and then you give them some kind of message, right? That, to me, that's my ridiculously simple way of thinking about marketing. It's, all right, is everyone paying attention to me? This is what I want you to do, buy Coca-Cola, right? So that's been marketing for hundreds of years. And the reason that that's all you could do is because technically that's all you really had available to you. You had a board that you could put some ad onto, and if people paid attention to it, that was the flashlight, and if they understood the message and the call to action, that was the response. Well, guess what? We have this new way of approaching people. We have these virtual identities that are online, and now we can talk about retaining these people. We can get to know them. We can introduce them into our home. We can have them sit down and have a nice tea and sit next to somebody else that they know that has something in common with them, and we're doing this all virtually. So retention and activation is this new age that's dawned upon us, and what we've been seeing is people overdoing the capture phase of this to the point where people get sick of it and they backlash against it. And it creates a situation that I like to call loyalty backlash, where it's active disengagement. It's people that deliberately and specifically will not buy your product because you've annoyed them or pissed them off somehow or betrayed them. So retention and engagement and activation are really the next big wave. And on a business side, why does engagement matter? Because if you do it right, and these are some real statistics that we've seen, you get higher revenues, you get lower acquisition costs of new customers, you get way, way, way better data, which lets you do much, much better one-to-one marketing and stronger retention rates. So I always have to talk at least for a moment about this, because as a gameplay designer, this drives me nuts. So Bart kind of talked about this, but I'm sure he would agree with me. Badges and points aren't a solution to everything. There's no silver bullet magic one thing that you can do. Badges and points have a particular role in the design process and in the engagement process, but I've seen a lot of companies that would have had an identical presentation up until now, as what I just showed you, and then now they would talk about how great badges and points are. Okay, gameplay designer over here, this is nonsense. You can't just solve problems like that, and I'll show you why. So let's start with badges. A badge is really an a non-interactive token or a symbol of recognition of something that you've done that may or may not have been a valuable action for you. So even in grade school, so I don't know if this is just a Canadian thing, but when you were in grade school, did you get stickers for doing well? So you got perfect on your spelling and you did a sticker and it would go on this little chart. Okay, so here we are, little Bobby gets his sticker, feels really satisfied because he accomplished something, maybe did really well on the spelling test. And sure enough, that works for a while and Bobby feels engaged enough to want to fill up his entire chart. But after a while, the concept runs pretty thin, because all the sticker is a non-interactive little symbol of something that may have been fun and rewarding, but it's not the fun and rewarding thing. It's just a souvenir of that action, and the sticker is an interactive dead end. So don't believe that there's any interactivity unless you now do something with the stickers where there's a game, like maybe spelling out this blows. But unless you're doing something like that, then the sticker itself doesn't really have value. And what we've been really, really careful to do in our designs and with our technology is make sure that this is the start of the interactivity, that if you are collecting things, then there's some purpose in the collection that is playful and engaging and maybe competitive or collaborative. So don't stop at just stickers. As for points, so we've seen this a lot too. Oh, let's give people points for doing things. That'll motivate them and we'll put them on a leaderboard. Okay, here's my problem with leaderboards. I'll let that sink in. This is how I feel anyway. I'm on a leaderboard. Everybody above me is somebody that I hate. Everybody below me hates me because I'm above them. And the person at the top, we don't trust him because somehow he or she must have cheated to get there. So a leaderboard does have a place, it does have a role, but it's not something that you have to put out there because this is great for a competitive community. For a collaborative community, this is a destructive mechanism. If you're wanting people to work together, don't put a leaderboard into an environment. Create some sort of collaborative goal for people to work on together. So I've just talked about points and badges, and hopefully have left you with the idea that they're not the only thing you can and should do. So let's look at technology options. Now that I've put that aside and talked about what you shouldn't do, one of the choices that everybody has is to build technology from scratch. And this is exactly what Steam has done. So Steam, if you're familiar with them, the biggest, I guess, online download service for PC games. All of the top games are on Steam. Hundreds of amazing titles you can just buy it. It's digital download. Now, what they did a year ago was they added this system called Steam Trading Cards. And Steam Trading Cards, you earn them by buying the games and playing the games, and things within the game will unlock these cards that are used outside of the game in a separate game experience. So you can go through and replay all of Steam's games and get all of these new cards, and there's a game with rules and with with an economy of collectibles. And this is this new thing that they've done. It's been so successful that within the past 12 months, less than 12 months, they've gone back through their entire catalog and added this functionality to 600 of their back catalog games. And it's rejuvenated that community. So you're probably not Steam with gameplay designers and this really amazing technology stack. So what other options do you have? This is where companies like mine come in. Now, we're not the only people that do this, but just this is what I know best. So I can talk to you about some of the things that we've done and we've built, just so that you're aware that this exists, so that you don't believe that you have to build these things yourself. So if you have a cool idea, there are technologies such as ours that will allow you to launch engagement activities, loyalty programs, and contesting and promotional systems, and even the ideas of gamification and VIP rewards and status programs. So how does it work? For example, our platform does have badges and points, but what we really pride ourselves in is this idea that there are collectibles that you can create games around, and the idea that you're building a timeline, and there's social activities where your collections allow you to meet other people that have similar collections, and the idea that you can add contests and rewards and other deeper, richer, like true game design systems into it. And we're finding that this is way, way, way more engaging than just putting a badging and point system in. Some other very powerful elements that are part of systems like this are things like social matchmaking. So, for example, this is one of our projects where people were allowed to collect up all these little virtual goods, and depending on how similar your collection was to other people, it would actually form a community of like-minded individuals. Very powerful idea, especially for all of those lonely people online that would love to find other people that think just like them. And there's really high conversion rates on that. And of course, as you're getting people to make choices, which is what a game is really about, like making choices, as people make a choice, every time they make a choice, they're telling you something new about themselves. And as they tell you these things, you can start generalizing. This is a picture of our campaign manager. This is how the system is actually managed. You can add new items to the system, add new rules at any time. It's a very, very user-friendly way of looking at the environment, at the online environment. But there's also reports that spit out these kind of generalizations of the community. And then this is the sort of last major theme within the technology, that there are ways for you to categorize users' behavior that is new. So it used to be that, say, in a business environment, we'd look at air miles or any sort of points program. What you're really looking at is what are people spending? That's the one dimension, which is the transaction. It's only the blue line. But there's so many other things that people can do that are valuable to you, like, what do they do in the real world? Are they visiting stores? Are they checking in at different events or venues or sports arenas? Are they socially networking on their current social media channels? And then the fourth one is social engagement. Are they interacting with other community members within this group? So you can categorize and group and cluster these people. Now, I wish I could spend all kinds of time going through examples, but I'm not really able to based on time. But we've done a number of projects with a number of different categories. So game companies, sports and entertainment, sports teams, consumer package brands, shopping centers, hospitality, hotels, all kinds of different projects where the platform supports multiple different ways of creating these engagement solutions. But it's really one technology that does it in multiple different ways. So, question for you. On the very first slide, there was a little pug in the corner that said, "Find and count me." Now, throughout this presentation, there were a number of pugs hidden. Was anybody actually trying to count them all? How many did you come up with? 8? Anybody come up with a higher number than 8? That's a hint. Nobody? So there were actually 12 pugs hidden throughout the presentation. And the question that I have, yeah, they were all there, I promise you. The question I have is, if you were one of the ones counting, were you paying attention a little more closely? Were you getting a little bit excited as the next slide was coming up? Were you feeling a little bit more engaged? So that was just a playful way of us demonstrating that some of these ideas of engagement don't have to be complicated. They can be very simple. But if you do it right, then it can have some really nice outcomes and nice consequences that are valuable to you and possibly even valuable to me if you're paying more attention. So that's it. Happy to take your questions when we have the next break.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Steve. I'll start adding a pug in my game's right-hand side, lower right-hand corner then. Okay, the next speaker will have Paul, another very successful CEO and co-founder and director of Booktrack. And he's also a officer, a pilot in the Royal New Zealand Air Force, right? Used to be. Oh, well, very. So let's hear his presentation then.
Cool, thank you. Oh, can we get the video on the big screen, please?
James, I downloaded a Booktrack.
Booktrack, hear the future of reading.
Nope, hang on. Give me 1 second, guys. Hang on. All right, there we go. First of all, it's great to be back in Hong Kong. I grew up in Hong Kong. My co-founder's in Hong Kong. Booktrack was invented in Hong Kong. And I'm here to talk a little bit about reading. So first of all, we know the world's changing. Once upon a time, only the wealthy owned libraries. And now we carry our whole library around in our pocket. And the way we look for entertainment now, our entertainment expectations have changed enormously. It's not just social media, mobile. We even plug our TVs in now and surf through that way as well. But when you think about reading, the humble book, the way we read 2,000 years ago to the way we read today hasn't really changed. Distribution has changed enormously, but even that on the screen there you can see, and even in iBooks on a beautiful iPad, it still looks like a book. You still swipe to turn the page like a book. Everything else on your mobile devices you scroll up and down on, but we're still holding on to this notion of reading in exactly the same way as we did 2,000 years ago. And that's led to a big problem, and this is just the United States, but these stats are all around the world. The fact of the matter is people are just not reading anymore, and it's a big problem, and we like to call that the elephant in the room. And I particularly like this elephant because he's watching television, he's not reading a book. with his mate, the dog there. And what we wanted to do is work out what could we do about that? How does reading compete in this multimedia world that we live in today? Anyone with young kids, especially boys, would know how hard it is to get them to read, excited about reading. And the one thing we noticed was that everything we do is better with sound. You know, if you think about movies, video games, kids, everyone goes around with something plugged into their ear, plugged into their mobile device these days. So sound is one of the big drivers and one of the big emerging mobile technologies that everybody's starting to have a look at. So that was the first thing we noticed. And we also looked at what books had done since they went digital. So a whole subsection of books came about which was called enhanced books. And what you did with enhanced books is you could add videos or game experiences into reading. Now, the most powerful thing about reading, you know, a novel is you get lost in this deeper level imagination of the mind state. It's called getting lost in a story. And you actually forget you're reading and you just start, the words blur and you start building up this state of the mind. Now, if you then get interrupted to go and watch a video or play a game, it's a huge distraction because you then have to get back into that state of the mind, which can take you a paragraph or at least a few lines before you get into it again. So what we found is all around the world, publishers, for some uses like how-to books, videos work great, but generally it's been a complete flop and publishers are moving away from enhanced books. And the reason is because it distracts you from reading. So what we do at Booktrack is we are still the only enhancement to reading that's delivered to you while you read. And here's a short video of what Booktrack is.
Nathan likes to read. Sometimes life gets in the way of a good read. Enter Booktrack. By blending inspired sound design with great stories, Booktrack creates a totally high-def, immersive reading experience. Ambient audio, sound effects, and music are carefully synchronized, celebrating the imagery of the author's text and drawing you deeper into the story. Booktrack's breakthrough technology can sense your reading speed and automatically adjusts pacing of the audio tracks to match.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
If you lose your place, all you have to do is double tap on any word and the audio will resync to the section you select. You can also control the audio layers to create your ideal sound mix. Each track can be turned off, lowered, or raised depending on your personal preference. It's like having a personal composer arranging the perfect movie-style soundtrack for your book. With Booktrack, reading isn't just words on a page. It's a truly sensory experience, making it easy for Nathan to get wrapped up in a good story.
Good read?
Reading never sounded so good.
Booktrack. Hear the future of reading.
See how we go this time. See if I get to the next slide, maybe. Oh, give me a sec. Same problem. Oh, there's the one I want. Okay, so that's Booktrack. We're a synchronized soundtrack while you read. It's music, sound effects, ambient sound. And the way it works is every time you turn the page, we know how many words are on the page, we can measure your reading speed, and then you get a soundtrack that'll adapt to match depending on how fast or slow you're reading. And yeah, it's very much like going to the movies, but while you read. And what we did is we had an idea, we brought it to market. We've had people like Peter Thiel and Peter Jackson's Sound Studio and Weta Digital invest in the business. We've worked with best-selling authors like Salman Rushdie and many others, all the top publishing houses. And we've won a number of awards around innovation. And about a month after we launched, the phone rang one day. It was Apple saying, everyone in the office is using your app. Do you want to be a key account? So we've worked closely with them and Google and many others. So one of the interesting things was we had a lot of press as well. So from all around the world, it continues today, and everything from the future of reading to an advance in electronic publishing. But it wasn't all positive. We've also had some people that saying, you know, when I read, I kind of like to read in silence. And I don't know about this whole adding a soundtrack while I read sort of thing. And, you know, TechCrunch has covered us about 4 times. One time, you know, one of the writers said, you know, what about letting the sounds and smell of the story play out in your mind? Whereas, well, the next 2 are not actually about us. They're from 1928 when sound was added to film. And Time magazine called the effect startling and often annoying. And Literary Digest said it makes a double assault on the nerves. And it's because by nature, we don't like change. You know, how many people have an iPhone here, but you don't use Siri, which is just an amazing technology, but you just don't want to go too far. You just keep using the phone how you always used to using it. And that's because by nature what we're doing and others doing, it's a little bit disruptive. It kind of is a bit new, and it's interesting when you see a kid start to use our app. They just expect to have sound when they read. It's because what they've grown up with another screen. And I love this quote from Mr. Warner Brothers, is who the hell wants to hear actors talk? You know, this was back in 1927. And if you've seen the movie The Artist, this is what it's all about. So, and this is something that really sticks with me is, you know, when you actually experience something new, it really is hard to go back on that. And my big moment for that was a guy named Mark Darcy. He's the creative director at Facebook. I'd kind of been stalking him for about a year, and eventually I managed to convince him to have lunch. And we sat down and he goes, Paul, I know you do the soundtracks for books thing. I tell you what, when I read, I like silence. I'm not going to like it. I said, that's fine, Mark. But can you just give it a try for me? And so I slid the iPad across the table and he felt like he had to. So he listened for and read for about 15 minutes. And when he took it off, this is exactly what he said. He said, I didn't see the future of reading, I just heard it. And on the back of that, he invested in our business. He joined our board and been one of our biggest advocates ever since. And then something else happened is schools started using this all around the world. And that led to a New York University study, and then more recently an Auckland University study, and it proved an instant increase in comprehension and retention. So if you read syllabus text without the Booktrack and then read the Booktrack version, you get a 17% increase in comprehension. It's like going from a fail to a pass or a B to an A. And we just recently launched an education product around this, and it's starting to take off all around the world at the moment. And these are some of the quotes from the students from the study. It makes me feel calm, it smooths the words out on the page. Helps me read because it makes reading like watching a real movie, which is interesting in itself. So what happened next? So that takes us to about the 2-year mark, and what we realized was that users who tried Booktrack really liked it. They all left the same reviews on the App Store. Wow, I was skeptical, I tried it, I love it. But they all said the same thing at the end. They said, more titles, please. And over a couple of years, we'd built up 50 titles, and it just wasn't enough to meet the demand. So what we did was we opened up the ability for anybody to create their own Booktrack and publish it. And I'll just share a short video on that now.
There's something special about getting lost in a story. Ebooks, blogs, self-publishing, writers have more ways than ever to express their imagination. And readers have never had so many options at their fingertips. Booktrack synchronizes music, effects, and ambient sound to text, helping your inner imagination come alive. Booktrack is a more immersive reading experience. You can escape into a story at your own pace. Bring a new dimension to the written word by adding layers of sound and music to the stories you write, creating the perfect soundtrack for your words. Share your creations with the world and take the experience of reading to new emotional heights. Booktrack. Soundtracks for books.
Give me a second here. So we launched that 5 months ago, and this is what happened. Just in 5 months, 300,000 people turned up. They created 3,600 Booktrack titles. Remember, we've been at this for 2 years and created 50. In 5 months, 3,600 titles in 30 different languages. It's been used any moment all around the world. But they're coming back, 5 times or more, 35% of people. So it's really sticky and people are really liking it. So it's just, the whole point of this panel was to talk about new technologies, which is what we are. But more importantly, how do people interact with it? And what we found is opening up the tools to let anybody create their own, share that with their friends. That's increased the engagement through the roof and really has propelled the company forward. It's about 30% month-on-month growth at the moment. So that's the Booktrack story. Thanks a lot for listening. Please give it a try. Email me, tell me what you think. Cheers.
Okay, so we come to the discussion session, and any questions from the floor? I still haven't seen any over the Twitter. Any questions? No? So I will take the lead then. So today our theme is about audience interaction and new technologies. But actually I have a feeling that with new technologies, sometimes it's a little bit hurting the interaction with the audience. As you can see, when we are giving a speech, quite a lot of actually are tapping their iPhone, their smartphones. So what, in your opinion, can we do to make use of this to our advantage, to improve the audience interaction with new technologies, or maybe with gamification or something? So, yeah.
Oh boy, I have a lot of thoughts about that because I really do debate in my mind sometimes how valuable technology has become and the dependency on it. And I think even some of the core principles of the way we approach this issue or challenge of engagement is to really simplify things and to not think, to me it feels like technology is already so complex. It's easy to make complicated technology. It's really difficult to design things that are simple. So like all of the different options that we have, and maybe Edith will want to talk to this because we have so many apps that we can download and install, and it's just this sea of demand for our attention. And how do we make our lives a bit more simple and a bit more clean and a bit more friendly and a bit more personal? So yeah, I sort of hate the thought of pushing people in the wrong direction, but I am ashamed to say that I really don't know what the solution is because here I am with potentially a product that just makes the problem worse. But people want to do this, and we want to make sure that people get to do what they want to do and that they have fun doing it and that they enjoy themselves while they're doing it. But I really, really do have my own dilemmas, and I'm really anxious to see over the next 5-10 years how we as a society resolve this issue. Because you're right, here we are sitting here and people are on their phones. They're not looking up, they're looking down. And what are they missing? They're missing this moment. And are they capturing it? Maybe they're making notes. But more than likely they're trying to do two things at once. And I never used to be able to do that. When I'd go to a sporting event 10 years ago, I didn't have a phone. All I did for those 3 hours was pay attention to what was going on and talk to the people next to me, and nobody could reach me. And somehow that was okay. Somehow I could still have a good time, and now that's not acceptable anymore. So this is depressing. I'm going to hand the microphone to somebody else.
So maybe Paul or Edith?
This is a really, really hard thing because by nature we're creating apps just so you look at the phone. So I want you to look at the phone and hopefully using Dolphin to browse. But I'm not really answering your questions, but one of the things that, when Steve sort of mentioned, looking at engagement, not for the live audience, but as app developers, we look at install, and then, we sort of mentioned it today, how we look at an app in terms of active app, MAU, like the monthly active user, daily active users. But another metrics I think is very important for people to think about is how many of them install your app and how many of them actually uninstall. And there's, you guys have so much more experience with games. I think it's very, very difficult to see a game that have a shelf life more than a year. A lot of them maybe a few months. And for Flappy Bird, which is very interesting, they actually didn't have much install. And then later on, maybe I think it was either a blogger's also a review video, and then really drive up the engagement about 9 months later. I think it's really, really rare to find cases like this. And of course, as a mobile developers, I want you to look at your phone all the time. So it's completely okay that you don't look at me, as long as you're using either Dolphin or tweeting about and make sure that you're at cyberport_Hong Kong and follow that. And we want you to not only engage with us here, but what's the powerful thing about mobile is that you can continue to engage with us for many, many, many years and months after this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you don't fight it. I think you'd embrace it. So wouldn't it be great if everyone everyone, as you were listening to us speak, there was an activity you could do on your phone that would contribute to what was going on up here in some way. And it's a bit the same like when you watch television or you are at a sporting event, you're often on your phone, but what about if you could be actually a part of what's going on in some way? And some people are trying to do that at the moment. No one's really worked it out, but I think that's the sweet spot, and there's massive revenues there if you can work that out, because I think what we all want to do, we would love to play a part, and that's ultimate engagement. So as soon as you crack that, then that's huge.
And that's actually when you talk about being a fan or in the audience of something, one of the projects that we did this past year was with a sports team, and it's a season-long engagement activity for the fans. Now what would happen is, it was for hockey, ice hockey, of course, I'm from Canada, and during the games they would put code words up on the screen, and you'd go to a mobile website on your browser, you'd enter that code word, and you get to play a little game where you turn these pucks over, and you could instantly win things, and even if you didn't win, the things that you turned over would go into your collection, and throughout the season you'd be trying to complete this collection. There were bonuses. It was fun. It was this really cute little thing that you could do during breaks in the entertainment. And they would also distribute the codes through their Facebook channels and during the broadcasts of the game. So they were getting this amazing high-resolution picture of who their fans were. They could see, these are all of our fans that follow us on social media and listen to or watch our broadcasts, but that have only been to one game. So we know that they're close enough to us to come to a game, but they don't spend a lot of money coming to the game. So here's their email address. Why don't you send them a discount or some kind of offer? So great analytics, a better fan experience. But I still, wonder whether there was a more enticing simplicity before when we bought a ticket to the game and all you were really getting was the game. Now the fans and the audiences and the communities have such higher standards that it's almost what you have to offer them is so much more than what the original product was. And we all expect that and we demand that. And this is the cost of doing business now. Like, you can't just put a sports team in the middle of an arena and have them perform. You have to give so much more. You have to give entertainment during the intermissions. You have to give them these socially engaging activities and contests, and you have to give stuff away to them, and you have to have a Facebook page, and it's complicated, but I guess it's better.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay, let me... Oh, there's one question from Twitter for Booktrack. Oh. Booktrack, does it work on different languages and genres of books?
Okay. Good question. At the moment, it works across all mobile devices in the browser, but it's just English or Latin-based languages at the moment. We're about to extend that to character-based languages as well this year, so that's coming soon.
Okay, thank you. So I think there's one question from the floor. Yeah, give her the mic.
Thanks for coming. I am really excited about all the opportunities that technology provides, and especially with our social interactions and things like that. It's weird seeing myself on the screen. But I'm concerned about the diverging technological literacies among people all over the world, especially different income groups. It's kind of like analogous to income disparities in cities and things like that. And this brings up a question of access to these things. So like Booktrack is like an amazing way to improve literacy, but how do we get that to the kids who need it, or how do we get it to the groups that need it? And so I was wondering what you think the implications are for our technological future and social sustainability. Thanks.
Okay, anybody? So.
I think that, about accessing, we always have, as I mentioned before, I think even the DAU for Google is about 2.5 billion a day, and as I mentioned before, it's about 7 billion people on Earth. And there's a lot of people don't have access to the internet. It have a lot to do with because it's simply too expensive. If you actually go to a country like India, Indonesia, they can't afford. And I think that in order to improve quality of life, it's all about education. And so they can actually listen to Booktrack. But at the same time, if they don't have access, it's a big issue. And that's why, in many ways, I'm really excited about mobile internet. Not just because it's another cool technologies that you have to learn about all these new things. It's because this new thing actually flattened the world in many ways and let people access for free for the first time with really cheap and lower end handsets. That I think that now with Khan Academy and with YouTube, there's a lot of free content out there, which. Can you imagine even only 20 years ago, you're still buying the Britannica, like actual book of encyclopedia? Why would you even do that anymore? People couldn't afford it, but now you can actually just look it up online for free. I think that's the really, really exciting part. It may seem like there's even more things to learn, but in fact, these new things is actually helping education and flatten the world even more. Thoughts?
I actually think the biggest companies in the world will solve this problem. So at the moment, they as somebody had the stats earlier, I think it was Bart, they're reaching 1 billion people at the moment. They want to reach that other 2 billion or whatever that they're not accessing. What did Facebook and Google, actually Google and Facebook just bought these ultra high altitude drones so they can distribute, internet into far off countries. I've worked a lot in developing in third world countries. Mobile networks are already there, and as handsets come down, the mobile web. So I actually think the biggest companies in the world will solve that problem because they want that audience, and governments have a part to play. But I think, I put a lot of faith in the Facebooks and Googles of this world to solve that first.
And I think it's important for people like yourself to be impatient about this problem, because if there's something that's socially beneficial, then why should it only be for the people, sort of the top 20% of the global population? It should be for everybody. But we've seen this time and time again, even going back to the Gutenberg press, where at first printed books were only for the elite. They're for the people that could afford it. And we found a way, for things that are socially valuable, we find a way to make it affordable. And it may take way longer than we'd like it to, and that's why I said the impatience is valuable. But I think there are corporations that will pitch in. I think there are governments that will pitch in. And if it looks like if we can have technologies that allow us to get 17% better on our test results, then why should that be hoarded amongst the elite economies of the world? And I think most people feel that way. It's just a question of how do we make that happen then?
I don't agree. Say it for the heck of it.
Okay.
We talked before this session about we've got to find things that we disagree about for your amusement so that we could fight amongst each other and make it really entertaining for you. But I disagree. We shouldn't have to fight. How's that?
Okay, any more questions from the floor? Do we still there's one question. Okay.
I have a question to Steve and maybe Gabriel as well, because my question is about game. Candy Crush got a map showing the position of all players, and I think it is a kind of a leaderboard. So do you think it is a successful leaderboard? And what element is essential in a successful leaderboard that can promote the interaction among the players and entertaining fans?
So I would never start with the mechanic. I would always start with the community that I was trying to design a solution for and ask some very pointed questions about the personality and the character of that community. So I mentioned before, sorry, I can see you here. So I mentioned before that one of the projects that we did was for a sports team. So the fan community of a sports team, you're drawn to sports because you like competition. So if you like competition, you're going to like competition even with people that you agree with, like ourselves here trying to find ways to argue. If I'm at a sporting event, and even if I'm cheering for the same team, I'll place bets with the person next to me, even though we're on the same side. Let me give you another example of a company that we are looking to start a new project with, and they are, how can I describe this without using their name? It's like a health, sort of health and beauty products. And their community is very collaborative. They care about each other. They want to encourage each other towards health goals and healthful outcomes. I would never put a leaderboard in that environment. It would be destructive. I would gladly put one into the environment of a sports fan community. So you don't sort of start and say, how can I successfully design this mechanic? You start and say, what is the personality of this community and what would they respond best to? So if it's a collaborative environment, let's give them collaborative challenges where if all of us do something, let's say we're all collaborative, if all of us do something together, then we all win somehow. I'm not going to put this person on a leaderboard because we want us to all feel like we're working together. I might actually split the room in half and say this half of the room has to compete against this half of the room, because really the goal there, the outcome is going to be you're going to feel like a group and you're going to feel like a group, and that's a big enough group for me to feel good about, even if one side wins and the other side loses, but I wouldn't do it on an individual level. So it is really, there's a diagnosis there, and it doesn't start with the mechanic, it starts with the qualities and the personality of the community.
Okay. Any more comments? No. Okay. Any
I'm
more questions?
I got something. I was going to disagree with you. I think I think a lot of the interaction. This isn't just leaderboard based, but sports based. You said earlier, there's Facebook pages, there's this and that, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I just think often that's a lot of noise. Like it actually isn't that meaningful. And I think wouldn't it be great if you were watching that ice hockey game, and the fans got to vote continuously as the game was playing who got subbed or not, and when they hit 250,000 sub that guy, he gets subbed. Or the coach puts up these 3 options here. What do you guys think? That's real interaction. Like that is something that would definitely suck you in. And at the moment that sounds ridiculous, but you know what? If that's what the fans demand, and that's just an example. I think meaningful interaction's missing.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's ridiculous. I've often fantasized that if I somehow had a Facebook-like exit one day, that I'd use some of my hundreds of millions of dollars to buy a pro sports team, and I would list the shares of that sports team on a public stock, and every person that owns some of that stock would have voting shares. And every week we'd put a list of questions on, should we trade this player, should we fire the coach? And we would just do what people said they wanted to have happen. I wonder how that team would do.
More than that, it would be so well followed, wouldn't it?
Totally. It would be like this amazing new thing. So if anybody wants to pitch in some money towards this idea, maybe I'll post it on
maybe Edith.
crowdfunding sites, and you can just send it.
If that happened, you'll be the Canadian Mark Cuban, but look like Jeff Bezos.
That is the kindest thing anybody's ever said to me. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions from the floor? Yeah, over there.
I have one question for the CEO of Booktrack. I really like the product, and I want to know what inspired you to combine 2 media domains like text and audio. And second question is, there are a lot of copyright issues in the media world, and how would you solve the problem? Like when you embed the music into the book, how would you solve that problem? And what other, third question is, what kind of other domain can you embed into the music? For example, like ambience music into other product, like a combination of everything.
Okay, so the first question, the idea for Booktrack came on the ferry from Discovery Bay into Central. So my brother used to catch that ferry every day, and he used to get out his paper book. This is back in 2005, 2006, so pre-Kindle, and he'd plug in his, I don't even know if it was iPods then, whatever it was, version 1, he'd plug in his headphones and he'd start reading the book. And he noticed from time to time a happy song happened to play with a happy part of the book, or sad with sad. And he took his headphones off and looked around, and he said every second person on the ferry was doing the same thing. They had ears plugged in and they were reading a book or a newspaper. So he went, yeah, this is actually a really good experience. We should do this. So he rang me, and I was running a team of 30 engineers. And so we started researching and prototyping and patenting. So that was where the idea came from. It turns out it wasn't such an original idea. James Patterson tried it years back. Stephanie Myers used to blog and list all the songs she was listening to when she wrote Twilight, and her fans would download those songs and listen to them while she read. But these devices didn't exist at the time. So it wasn't until when we prototyped and patented back then, but it wasn't until the iPad came out that we actually said, right, we need to go and build a company around this. So that's the first question. Second question, copyright, was you've got to own the rights, right? We're big supporters of copyright. We work with all the biggest publishers. So you have to own the right to the text, and when you create the book track, there's 20,000 free audio files you can use to create your book track, or you can bring your own audio in, but you've got to own that as well. So we're really big on protecting copyright, especially since we work with the biggest publishers and music providers in the world. And the third question, what's possible? Yeah, a huge amount of things are possible. I mean, when we showed our latest thing to the Google Chrome team, they said basically the answer is yes, what you want. They said it's the first meaningful example of soundtrack in the web they've seen. Multiple streams of audio, adapting to your reading speed, so you hear the right sounds at the right time while you read. They said that's really hard to do. And so we said, well, there's actually 6 bugs in Chrome we need you to fix. And here's the fix. And they said, sure, so they did that for us. So, people are using it for screenplays, they're putting it to blogs. And what we're going to do in the future, enable you to embed it in your own browser, so your own blog, your own page, wherever you want. Very much how You do that with YouTube videos. You can then take the technology and put it wherever you want. So plenty on the horizon.
Okay, any more questions? Okay.
Okay, I have a question about disruption, and I think the whole idea of audience attention has something to do with, well, anyway, the way the three of you talk about what you're doing is like, the idea is disruption. You're trying to win the disruption. Maybe we're choosing, for instance, for Edith, someone may be using Safari, maybe using another browser, whatever. You want them to switch over to yours. And likewise, for Steve, the idea of working with your client and make sure that they choose your product instead of someone else's product. Is there a science in disruption? Are you guys working on that? I mean, especially in the realm of digital entertainment, we want people to pay attention, actually, don't we? Right? So are you working on, winning, taking people's attention away, disrupting them to go to your source?
So the study of disruptive innovation, so I believe it was Christensen in The Innovator's Dilemma that first really described that. And there's more to it than just something that is different than we've done before, and more than just the little definition that Paul had put up. Disruptive innovation, what it really means is that there's an existing standard that falls within some range. So there's the low end of what the market wants, there's the high end of what the market wants, and we know this, okay? And people are buying these solutions. And then over time, the standards increase. So the low gets higher and the high gets higher, okay? So that's generally how innovations roll out. What happens with disruptive innovations is that these incumbents, the people that are already in here, see something that hits the scene early, and they assess it, and they say, that's not a threat to us. So a great example, digital cameras. When digital cameras first hit the market, they were very expensive, they were very slow, and they were very grainy. So Kodak, Polaroid, Fuji looked at these and said, nobody's ever going to want this because our customers say they want, and they fill in the blanks, like all these things that we're already providing, and our best customers tell us they want even more of this stuff. So they end up improving their product, and it pops right out the top of that top end of what people are willing to pay for. In the meantime, the disruptor has improved their product to the point where it now pops up the bottom. And now the old companies that used to do very well are exposed and vulnerable. The new companies come in and completely dominate the landscape. So what Paul has here, I'm sure there are things that you could describe about your current product that aren't quite the way you want them to be. So, and I don't know what those are, we haven't discussed that, but it may be that it's, the tracking isn't as good, or maybe it's, whatever, there's probably a list of maybe 5 things in his head right now that the, maybe the publishing industry or some of the people that he showed it to would look at it and say, well, because of these 5 problems, this will never threaten us. All he has to do is fix those 5 problems. And then suddenly this is what everybody wants. So that's really what disruption is. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question somewhat, but it's, yeah, it's not.
So I actually have an answer, I don't really have an answer, but I actually was thinking if everybody's looking at their phone now, I have a way, since you guys are all in this particular geolocation, I should just do the push notification and say, stop looking at your phone so you look at me. That would be a disruptive way of like getting your attention. But in all seriousness, there's actually a lot of conversation around like small cell and how do you actually do offload, not via 4G and LTE and all these is overload, right? So if you're actually in a particular geographic, this location, maybe I can offload some of these sort of network traffic. So there's a lot of conversation around that. But back to the whole disruption, sometimes I think that is a combination of timing and new technology. But I think the most amazing things to me sometimes is not necessarily so geeky or technology driven, but really is a new way of doing business. I think Airbnb is a really good example. We always have a couch. We sometimes stay at somebody's house, and now they actually have beat in terms of per year. So how many nights and in a room available is more than some of the Hilton or the Starwoods. And is it because of new technology? Not really, but is a new kind of economy. And a lot of these guys basically have been saying like sharing economy. And in many ways, sure, like mobile sort of one of the channel, but I think nowadays we should not only focus on the technology side of being disruptive, but it's about our thinking and new business models and the way that how we can utilize and share resources in many, many new ways. That's the part that I think is exciting.
And if you think back to what Bart said earlier, this isn't a race to see who can do something that forces people to change their behavior in a really dramatic way. What this is a process of trying to help people change their behavior in the slightest way, but that gives them bigger benefit. So you don't disrupt for the sake of disruption. You disrupt because it's necessary to help people to have a better outcome or a better future. You have to learn how to do something slightly differently today, and it may mean that I think about books in a different way. It may be I think about the browsing experience in a different way. Give me gesture recognition. Give me music while I'm reading. It's one little change that we can absorb. You don't want to give people 5 things at once. That's disruptive to your business. It's not disruptive to, it's not socially disruptive. You will not be successful if you just ask people to change for the sake of change or make the change too dramatic.
Any comments? No. Okay, any more questions from the floor? One more. Okay, it will be from me then. Actually, today we have quite many startups here. So can you give them a little bit short advice on how to promote the startup, how to do the business? So we can start with Edith.
Promote a startup. So one of the big things, time is up, is a very, very common Silicon Valley practice. If you're working on your startup, you should be wearing a t-shirt with your startup logo on it. I'm being serious. Just like this is a model sitting right here. Because you are the walking billboard for your startup. If you're not passionate about, and I should be wearing green, sorry. But anyway, I like to be ladylike. But you should be the walking billboard. You're so passionate about it. Tell me about it. I look at this logo. I want to go and scan on a barcode and try it right away. And really practice your pitch. I think that's like most of my friends in Hong Kong, sometimes it seems like they are very afraid. We need to speak up. If you're so passionate about what you're working on, practice and talk about it all the time. You should be losing sleep because you care about your business so much.
Thanks.
Tenacious optimism is what I say. It's what you need. 1,000% self-belief and listen to what people say, but then do what you think you need to do and want to do, because everyone's an expert, but they don't really know your business like you do. So, just go for it.
Thank you.
And if I had thought when I first started the company that the difficult thing was not going to be building a really, really complicated technology, but instead describing it to people in a simple way, I would have called bullshit on you all day long. And yet simplifying what we've done and how we help people has been 5 or 10 times more complicated, to me anyway, than actually building the stuff.
Okay, thank you very much for today. Thank you very much. Thank you. So guys, go upstairs and change your t-shirts.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Steve, Paul, and Edith. Thank you very much. We've now come to our coffee break. There's some refreshments, and we're pretty much on time, actually. So if we can convene here at 1600 at 4 o'clock, our third keynote, Stephanie Barish, and then we'll have our tri-keynote panel at the end. I hope you'll have good questions for Alvi and Bart, whom you've heard, and Stephanie once you've heard her presentation. So please enjoy refreshments, and see you back here in 30 minutes.